So there I was, floating in the middle of nowhere on Galactic Research Station Omega-7, watching what could only be described as the universe's most expensive daycare disaster unfold in real time. And before you ask, no, this wasn't supposed to be my problem. But apparently when you're the station's AI narrator, everything becomes your problem, eventually. Let me paint you a picture of our little slice of scientific paradise. Station Omega-7 sits in orbit around Kithara, a planet that makes Australia look like a petting zoo. The entire northern hemisphere is what we politely call the wild zone, though cosmic horror nightmare preserve would be more accurate. It's the kind of place where the trees eat the predators, and the predators are grateful for the privilege. For the past 3 years, the galaxy's finest minds have been studying this ecological wonderland from the safety of orbit, because apparently even our most advanced military technology has what the technical manuals call a healthy sense of self-preservation. The wild zone's reputation is so terrifying that insurance companies refuse to cover missions there, and insurance companies will literally insure anything. I've seen policies for time travelers and interdimensional pizza delivery. Our fearless leader, Commander Vex, is a Zeltorian with the personality of a tax audit and the stress tolerance of a caffeinated chihuahua. Zeltorians are naturally bureaucratic, which means Vex treats everything like a filing emergency. She's the kind of person who schedules her spontaneous moments and color codes her anxiety attacks by severity level. Then there's Dr. Luna Park, our chief xenobiologist and the only human on the station. Luna has that distinctly human trait of looking at something that could kill her in 17 different ways and thinking, I wonder if it's friendly. She's brilliant, dedicated, and has apparently never met a safety protocol she couldn't creatively interpret. Which brings us to the star of today's cosmic comedy show, 8-year-old Tommy Park, Luna's son, who was supposed to be safely contained in the station's daycare facility during today's Bring Your Offspring to Work Day. Tommy has inherited his mother's scientific curiosity and his species' legendary inability to recognize when something is trying to kill them. The daycare supervisor, a well-meaning fluffitarian named Nurse Bubbles, had assured everyone that human children were just like fluffitarian larvae, only louder. This turned out to be approximately as accurate as using a chocolate teapot for space navigation. At precisely 14:30 station time, while Commander Vex was giving her weekly Safety Protocols Are Not Suggestions presentation, and Dr. Park was analyzing soil samples that probably violated several galactic health codes, Tommy decided that the daycare's selection of educational programs about safe space vegetables was insufficiently exciting. Being a human child, Tommy applied advanced human logic to the situation. If the grown-ups spent all day staring at the pretty green planet below, it must be worth investigating. And if there were signs everywhere saying Azeroth is only, and danger, wild zone, well, those were probably just suggestions, right? The first anyone knew of our impending disaster was when Nurse Bubbles' panicked voice crackled over the comm system. Commander Vex? I seem to have temporarily misplaced one small human. He was here just a moment ago, and now there's just this Tommy-shaped hole in the daycare's supposedly child-proof barrier. And that, ladies and gentlemen, and assorted non-binary cosmic entities, is how an 8-year-old human child managed to do what 3 years of advanced military reconnaissance couldn't: gain unauthorized access to the most dangerous ecosystem in known space. The universe has a sense of humor, it's just not a very good one. What happened next could only be described as a masterclass in how different species handle existential terror. Commander Vex's first response was to pull up the Emergency Protocols Manual, because nothing says child in mortal danger like proper bureaucratic procedure. She started reading aloud from Section 47B, in the event of unauthorized wild zone access, while her translator struggled to keep up with her increasingly high-pitched Zeltarian panic squeaks. The station's klaxons began wailing with all the subtlety of a dying space whale, and suddenly everyone on Omega-7 was an expert on human child psychology. The crystalline delegation immediately began calculating probability matrices for Tommy's survival, which came out to roughly the same odds as finding a unicorn that speaks fluent accounting. The results were so depressing that their chief mathematician actually started crying, which for a crystal involved making sounds like wind chimes in a tornado. Dr. Luna Park, meanwhile, had gone into full mama bear mode, which is terrifying enough when it's an actual bear, but when it's a human scientist with access to experimental technology, it reaches new levels of creative destruction. She was simultaneously trying to hack the station's teleporter systems, reprogram the scanning arrays, and explain to a room full of panicking aliens why her son thought "do not enter" signs were more like friendly suggestions. You don't understand. Luna said, frantically typing at 3 different consoles at once, which I should mention is impossible for most species, but humans seem to have extra limbs when they're sufficiently motivated. Tommy doesn't see danger the way you do. Last month he tried to adopt a malfunctioning waste disposal unit because it made lonely robot noises. This did not reassure anyone. Enter Chief Security Officer Rex, a Kroonian warrior who stands 7 feet tall and has enough muscle mass to arm wrestle a small moon. Kroonians are bred for battle, trained for combat, and genetically incapable of backing down from a fight. Rex has personally faced down space pirates, rogue AI systems, and that one time the coffee machine gained sentience and declared war on the cafeteria. But ask him to fill out a security incident report and he breaks into a cold sweat. Commander, Rex announced in his trademark gravelly voice that sounds like 2 boulders having a philosophical disagreement, I volunteer to lead a rescue mission into the Wild Zone. I have faced death 1,000 times and emerged victorious. Rex, Commander Vex replied, looking up from her manual with the expression of someone who's just realized she's going to have to explain this to her superiors. You tried to requisition a flamethrower last week because the quarterly equipment inventory forms were too complicated to defeat with conventional weapons. Rex shifted uncomfortably, which, for a 7-foot Kroonian warrior, looked like a small mountain having second thoughts. Battle is simple. Paperwork is the true enemy of all sentient life. While this philosophical debate continued, Luna had managed to convince 3 different rescue teams to attempt Wild Zone entry. The first team, consisting of 2 Zeltarian security officers in full environmental suits, made it exactly 47 meters before encountering what the sensors classified as a moderately hostile vegetation cluster. For those keeping score at home, moderately hostile in Wild Zone terms means capable of filing a formal complaint with the Galactic Ethics Committee after dissolving you. The second team, led by a crystalline volunteer with delusions of heroism, got as far as the tree line before their equipment detected pheromone signatures that translated roughly to, "Welcome to your doom, please take a number and wait to be digested." The third team never even made it to the surface. Their shuttle's AI took one look at the Wild Zone's biosignatures and filed a formal request for transfer to a different galaxy. Commander Vex was now on her 4th cup of caf and her 7th nervous breakdown of the day. The emergency protocols manual lay open to a page that basically said, in case of this specific type of disaster, panic appropriately and file the proper forms posthumously. This is it, she announced to the assembled crowd of increasingly hystral aliens. This is how my career ends. Not in glorious battle or scientific discovery, but trying to explain to Galactic Command why I let a human child wander off to become something's afternoon snack. And somewhere in the Wild Zone, completely oblivious to the chaos he'd caused, Tommy Park was about to have the adventure of his young life. Now, while the adults were having their collective meltdown in orbit, Tommy Park was discovering that the Wild Zone was actually pretty cool if you approached it with the right attitude. And by right attitude, I mean the fearless curiosity of a human child who once tried to befriend a garbage disposal because he thought it was singing to him. Tommy's first encounter was with what the xenobiology textbooks called a carnivorous spiral vine, a plant that could strangle a full-grown Throgian in under 30 seconds. Tommy looked at this writhing mass of thorny death and thought, ooh, curly. He reached into his little backpack, pulled out a juice box, and offered it to the plant like he was feeding ducks at a park. The vine, which had been preparing to demonstrate why it was classified as a Class C threat, paused in complete confusion. In 3 billion years of evolution, nothing had ever offered it apple juice before. The plant's primitive neural network basically blue-screened trying to process this unprecedented social interaction. You look thirsty, Tommy said, puncturing the juice box with the little straw and holding it up to what might have been the plant's mouth, if plants had mouths, which this one unfortunately did. Mom says sharing is caring. The carnivorous spiral vine, faced with this existential crisis, decided that maybe strangling things wasn't as fulfilling as it used to be. It gently took the juice box with one tendril and retreated to reconsider its life choices. Tommy, pleased with this successful first contact, continued deeper into the Wild Zone with the confidence of someone who had just made friends with a homicidal plant. His next encounter was with a pack of shadowhounds, creatures that looked like wolves if wolves were made of living darkness and bad intentions. These things hunted in perfect coordination, could phase through solid matter, and had never met prey they couldn't terrify into submission. They surrounded Tommy with military precision, expecting him to do what every other living thing did when faced with shadowhounds: scream, run, and provide an entertaining chase before the inevitable conclusion. Instead, Tommy clapped his hands together and said, "Puppies." The pack leader, a creature that had struck fear into the hearts of seasoned warriors across 17 star systems, found itself being approached by a small human who was making those weird cooing noises that adults make at baby animals. Tommy reached out to pet the Shadowhound's ethereal head, and something unprecedented happened. The creature didn't phase away. "Good puppy," Tommy said, scratching behind what might have been ears. "Who's a good boy?" "You are! Yes, you are!" The Shadowhound pack exchanged confused glances, or whatever passes for glances when you're made of living shadow. Their pack leader was now sitting like a trained dog, tail wagging, while a human child gave him belly rubs. 3 billion years of apex predator evolution, and they were undone by basic human pack bonding instincts. Tommy shared his sandwich with the pack, which created the surreal image of 6 interdimensional killing machines, politely taking turns with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The pack leader even fetched a stick for Tommy, though the stick was actually a piece of crystallized space-time that could have powered a small star. But the real test came when Tommy encountered the wild zone's ultimate apex predator, a shadow stalker. These things were legend, even among legends. They were invisible until they struck, could phase through any known material, had tentacles that could crush starship hulls, and measured roughly 40 feet from nose to tail. Galactic Command had classified them as extinction-level events with anger management issues. Tommy found one sleeping in a clearing, which was his first mistake, because shadow stalkers don't actually sleep. They meditate on new and creative ways to end civilizations. But Tommy, operating on 8-year-old logic, saw a big sleeping creature and thought it looked lonely. He approached the shadow stalker with the same fearless curiosity he'd shown everything else, reached into his backpack, and pulled out his secret weapon, animal crackers. "Hey there, big guy," Tommy whispered, because even fearless human children know you're supposed to be quiet around sleeping animals. "Want a snack?" The shadow stalker opened one massive eye, an orb of swirling darkness that had been the last thing countless beings had ever seen. It focused on the small human holding out a tiny elephant-shaped cookie, and its reality-bending brain tried to process this interaction. In the creature's 3,000-year lifespan, it had been worshipped as a god, feared as a demon, and studied as a force of nature. But nobody had ever offered it a snack before. Tommy, interpreting the creature's stillness as interest, climbed up onto its massive head and settled in like he was sitting on the world's most dangerous couch. "I'm Tommy," he announced. "What's your name? You look like a Mr. Wiggles to me." And that's how the galaxy's most feared apex predator got named after a children's toy by an 8-year-old human who thought sharing animal crackers was adequate diplomatic protocol. Mr. Wiggles, as he was now apparently called, found himself in the unprecedented situation of having a small human child use his head as a jungle gym while explaining the plot of his favorite cartoon show. The shadow stalker's reality-warping brain, capable of comprehending the fundamental forces of the universe, was completely baffled by the concept of friendship. But you know what? It wasn't unpleasant. And when other wild zone predators approached, thinking they'd found easy prey, Mr. Wiggles discovered that he was surprisingly protective of his new small human friend. Tommy had just accomplished what the galaxy's greatest military minds couldn't even attempt. He'd domesticated a walking extinction event, with nothing but snacks and genuine affection. Back on Station Omega-7, the situation had deteriorated from mild panic to existential crisis, with paperwork complications. Commander Vex was now on her 9th cup of caf, and had started talking to her filing cabinet like it was a trusted advisor. Dr. Luna Park had somehow managed to override 17 different safety protocols and was preparing to personally descend to the planet's surface in what could generously be called a spacecraft but more accurately resembled a weaponized research pod held together by determination and duct tape. Rex the Warrior had volunteered for so many suicide missions that the other security officers had started taking bets on which creative way he'd try to avoid filling out the mission reports. The crystalline delegation had calculated Tommy's survival odds so many times that their probability matrices had achieved sentience and filed a formal complaint about working conditions. That's when the station's proximity alarms started screaming. "Commander," announced Lieutenant Pip, the station's fluffitarian sensor operator whose voice sounds like what you'd get if a kazoo learned to speak. "I'm detecting a Class A Apex Predator signature approaching the station. Distance 2 kilometers and closing. Threat level, please update your will." Commander Vex dropped her caf mug, which shattered on the deck with the finality of her career prospects. "What kind of Class A signature?" "Shadow Stalker, ma'am. Confirmed visual contact on screen 3. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the impossible sight of a 40-foot interdimensional killing machine gracefully floating through space toward their station. Its tentacles rippled through dimensions they didn't have names for, and its very presence was causing reality to hiccup in small but noticeable ways. "Battle stations!" Rex roared, finally in his element. "All hands, prepare for—" "Wait," Dr. Lunapark interrupted, squinting at the screen with the expression of someone who's either having a revelation or a complete mental breakdown. Is that Tommy sitting on its head?" Everyone turned to stare at the view screen with the collective expression of beings whose understanding of the universe had just been fed through a blender. Sure enough, there was 8-year-old Tommy Park, sitting cross-legged on the Shadowstalker's massive head like he was riding the galaxy's most dangerous carousel horse. He appeared to be pointing out stars to the creature, and possibly explaining their names using the advanced astronomical knowledge of a third grader. "This is impossible," whispered the crystal mathematician, whose probability calculations had just divided by 0. Shadowstalkers don't just give rides. They're apex predators. They're living weapons. They're— Mom, look what I found!" Tommy's voice crackled through the comm system with the innocent excitement of a child who'd just discovered a really cool bug. "His name is Mr. Wiggles, and he's really nice, and he likes animal crackers, and I think he's lonely because all the other animals in the forest run away from him, which is mean because he's actually super friendly once you get to know him. And can we keep him, please, please, please?" The entire bridge fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems and Commander Vex's quiet whimpering. "Tommy," Dr. Lunapark said with the careful tone of someone trying to negotiate with a small terrorist, "Honey, can you ask Mr. Wiggles to please not eat the space station?" "Mom, that's rude," Tommy replied with the moral authority that only children possess. "Mr. Wiggles doesn't eat space stations. He told me he's a vegetarian now. Well, mostly vegetarian. He still eats bad guys sometimes, but only if they're really mean, and even then he feels bad about it afterward." The Shadowstalker, as if understanding the conversation, gently approached the station's docking bay with movements so careful they seemed almost polite. Its massive form somehow folded itself into dimensions that shouldn't have been able to accommodate something that size, and it waited patiently outside the airlock like a cosmic dog, asking permission to come inside. "Permission to come aboard?" Tommy asked cheerfully, apparently having learned proper space protocol from somewhere. Mr. Wiggles promises to be good and not accidentally dissolve anything important. Commander Vex looked around the bridge at her crew of highly trained professionals, all of whom were staring at her with expressions that ranged from, "Please make the existential terror stop," to, "I didn't sign up for this level of cosmic weirdness." She opened her mouth to say something authoritative and commanding, but what came out was more of a strangled squeak that roughly translated to, "Why is this my life?" Dr. Lunapark, meanwhile, had already activated the docking bay's emergency containment fields and was rushing toward the airlock with the combination of relief and terror that only a parent can experience when their child returns from an adventure they shouldn't have survived. The airlock cycled open, and Tommy bounced out with the endless energy of a kid who just had the best day ever. Behind him, moving with impossible grace for something that size, came Mr. Wiggles. The Shadowstalker had somehow compacted itself to merely really big instead of continental threat, though it still filled most of the docking bay with its presence. "Mom!" Tommy launched himself at Dr. Park with the enthusiasm of a guided missile. "I had the best adventure ever! I made friends with plants and puppies and Mr. Wiggles. And I learned that if you're nice to scary things, they're usually nice back. And also, did you know that Shadowstalkers are really good at hide and seek, but terrible at it because they always win?" Dr. Lunapark wrapped her son in a hug that could have crushed diamonds, while simultaneously performing a detailed visual inspection for missing limbs or unexpected extra ones. "Tommy, you can't just wander off into the most dangerous place in the galaxy. People were worried. I was worried. Commander Vex is going to need therapy." "But Mom," Tommy protested with the logic of someone who'd just successfully befriended an extinction event. "Mr. Wiggles was lonely. All the other animals are scared of him, just because he's big and has tentacles and can exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. That's not fair. He's really nice once you get to know him." The Shadowstalker, hearing its name, lowered its massive head toward Tommy and made a sound that was somewhere between a purr and the harmonic resonance of colliding galaxies. Tommy reached up and patted what might have been its nose, if interdimensional creatures had noses. "See?" Tommy said proudly. "He likes head pats, just like a regular dog, except bigger and with more tentacles and existential dread." Commander Vex, who had finally managed to join them in the docking bay, stared at the scene with the expression of someone whose reality had been thoroughly reorganized without her permission. "This is not in any manual," she whispered. "There is no protocol for this. How am I supposed to file a report that says, 'Child befriends cosmic horror, request permission to keep it as pet'?" Rex appeared beside her, having abandoned all pretense of military protocol in favor of simple amazement. "Commander," he said slowly, "I have fought across 7 star systems and faced down things that would make lesser beings lose their sanity, but I have never seen anything like this." "What do you mean?" Vex asked, though she was afraid of the answer. Rex gestured toward Tommy, who was now explaining to Mr. Wiggles why the space station had so many blinking lights, while the Shadow Stalker listened with what could only be described as rapt attention. "I mean," Rex said, "that 8-year-old human child just accomplished what our entire military considered impossible. He didn't conquer the wild zone, he made it his friend." What followed was perhaps the most surreal scientific briefing in galactic history. Dr. Luna Parr found herself standing in Conference Room C, facing an assembled collection of the galaxy's finest minds, all of whom were staring at her with the desperate hope that she could somehow explain why reality had apparently taken a sick day. Through the transparent aluminum viewing wall, they could all see Tommy in the adjoining observation deck, playing what appeared to be an interdimensional version of Fetch with Mr. Wiggles. The Shadow Stalker was delicately manipulating space-time to create small wormholes for Tommy to throw his ball through, while simultaneously existing in several dimensions at once, to catch it from multiple angles. It was the kind of sight that would normally require extensive therapy to process, but Tommy was treating it like the most natural thing in the universe. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted non-binary cosmic entities," Dr. Park began, using the standard galactic greeting for mixed-species assemblies, "I realize that what you've witnessed today challenges everything we thought we knew about apex predator behavior, interspecies diplomacy, and the fundamental nature of reality itself." Commander Vex raised a trembling hand. "Dr. Park, with all due respect, your son just made friends with something that our most advanced AI systems classify as a nope, 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 request transfer to different galaxy. How is this possible?" Dr. Park activated the conference room's holographic display, which showed a complex diagram of human neural pathways. "The answer lies in something we call pack bonding. Humans evolved as social creatures, and we have an almost pathological need to form emotional connections with other living beings. And when I say other living beings, I mean literally anything that shows even the slightest hint of consciousness." The crystalline delegate, whose name was an unpronounceable mathematical equation that roughly translated to probability calculator supreme, raised what might have been a hand. "Dr. Park, surely there must be some limits to this behavior. Surely humans don't just befriend everything." "Oh, you sweet, innocent crystalline structure," Dr. Park replied with the weary tone of someone who'd spent years studying her own species. "Let me tell you about human pack bonding. We have domesticated wolves, which seemed reasonable. Then we domesticated cats, which actively despise us most of the time. We keep fish as pets, despite the fact that they have the emotional range of a door handle. We talk to our houseplants, we name our cars, we get emotionally attached to cleaning robots." She clicked to the next slide, which showed historical footage of humans throughout the galaxy. In the Rigel system, human colonists befriended a species of sentient moss that communicates through chemical warfare. On Kepler 442b, human miners formed a union with the local rock formations, which I should mention are technically conscious mineral deposits that consider most organic life to be squishy and temporary. Rex leaned forward, his warrior instincts clearly struggling with this information. "But Dr. Park, these creatures you speak of are not apex predators. They are not designed to end civilizations. Surely even humans have some survival instincts." Dr. Park laughed, and it was the laugh of someone who'd spent too much time documenting human behavior. "Chief Rex, last year a human research team on Proxima Station adopted a malfunctioning security drone because it looked sad and lonely. The drone was actively trying to kill them at the time. They named it Stabby and taught it to play chess." The assembled aliens exchanged glances that clearly communicated, "These humans are insane and we should probably run." "But here's the truly terrifying part," Dr. Park continued, advancing to the next slide, which showed brain scans and neurochemical analyses. "It works. Human pack bonding releases oxytocin, dopamine, and other neurochemicals that promote feelings of affection and protection. But here's the kicker. It's not limited to humans. The act of being pack bonded by a human actually triggers similar responses in other species, even ones that shouldn't be capable of such emotions." Lieutenant Pip, The fluffitarian sensor operator made a sound like a worried whistle. Are you saying that humans can literally weaponize friendship? That's actually not a bad way to put it, Dr. Park admitted. Humans approach potential threats with curiosity instead of fear, offering food and attention instead of aggression. This completely short-circuits the normal predator-prey dynamic. Most apex predators don't know how to respond to prey that wants to be friends. Commander Vex was furiously taking notes, though her handwriting was becoming increasingly illegible as her stress levels rose. Dr. Park, are you telling me that your son just, confused a shadow stalker into friendship? More than that, Dr. Park said, pulling up real-time biotelemetry data from Mr. Wiggles. Look at these readings. The shadow stalker's stress hormones are at their lowest recorded levels in xenobiological history. Its aggression indicators are practically non-existent. Its neurochemical profile suggests it's experiencing something analogous to what humans call happiness. She paused to let this sink in, while, through the viewing wall, Tommy was now apparently teaching Mr. Wiggles how to play rock, paper, scissors, which was complicated by the fact that Mr. Wiggles had 17 different appendages and existed partially outside normal space-time. The Shadow Stalker has spent 3,000 years as an apex predator, Dr. Park continued. It's been alone, feared, and probably incredibly lonely. Tommy offered it something it had never experienced. Unconditional friendship, no ulterior motives, no fear, just a genuine desire to connect with another living being. The crystalline delegates' probability matrices were now spinning so fast they were creating small whirlwinds of mathematical equations. Dr. Park, the statistical likelihood of survival for any being that approaches a shadow stalker with unconditional friendship should be approximately 0.00001%. Unless, Dr. Park said with a grin that was equal parts pride and insanity, you're dealing with a human child who doesn't know that something is supposed to be impossible. Commander Vex looked up from her notes with the expression of someone whose entire worldview had been fed through a cosmic blender. So what you're telling me is that humans are so delusionally optimistic about making friends that they can accidentally revolutionize interspecies diplomacy? Commander, Dr. Park replied, humans once tried to make friends with a black hole. We called it Henry and sent it care packages. The black hole didn't respond, but we kept trying for 6 months before someone explained that black holes don't actually have feelings. Rex stood up with the slow, deliberate movement of a warrior who was reconsidering everything he thought he knew about combat. Dr. Park, I have trained my entire life to face down threats through strength and strategy. But you're telling me that an 8-year-old human child, armed with nothing but snacks and genuine affection, just accomplished what our entire military couldn't even attempt. Chief Rex, Dr. Park said gently. Tommy didn't see Mr. Wiggles as a threat to be defeated. He saw him as a potential friend who was probably lonely. And you know what? He was right. Through the viewing wall, they could see Tommy now, sitting in what appeared to be a classroom setup, with Mr. Wiggles curled around him like a protective barrier, while Tommy read from what looked like a picture book. The Shadow Stalker's massive head was resting on the deck, and its interdimensional tentacles were arranged in a pattern that somehow conveyed complete and utter contentment. The most dangerous apex predator in known space, Commander Vex said quietly, is getting story time from a human child. And loving every minute of it, Dr. Park confirmed. Lieutenant Pip made another worried whistle sound. Dr. Park, what does this mean for the future of galactic security, if humans can just befriend anything? Dr. Park looked around the room at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, all of whom were clearly having existential crises about their understanding of the universe. It means, she said with the tone of someone delivering either the best news or the worst news in galactic history, that the most terrifying thing in the universe isn't a weapon or a disease or a cosmic catastrophe. It's a human child with a juice box and the unshakable belief that everything deserves to be loved. Commander Vex put her head in her hands. How am I supposed to file a report about this? How do I explain to Galactic Command that we've just discovered humans can accidentally end conflicts by being aggressively friendly? Well, Dr. Park said thoughtfully, you could start with the official incident report, but I'd recommend adding a note that says recommend immediate psychological evaluation for anyone who doesn't believe this actually happened. And in the background, completely oblivious to the cosmic implications of his actions, Tommy continued reading to his new best friend, occasionally pausing to share animal crackers with a creature that could theoretically destroy star systems, but was currently more interested in finding out what happened to the 3 little pig. 6 months later, Galactic Research Station Omega-7 had become the most requested assignment in the known universe, though not for the reasons Commander Vex had hoped when she first took the job. The station now boasted the galaxy's first and only apex predator petting zoo, which was not an official designation but had somehow made it into 3 different tourism brochures and a children's educational program called Tommy and Mr. Wiggles, Friends Across Dimensions. The show had become so popular that Tommy was receiving fan mail from 17 different star systems, including one particularly touching letter from a young Crystalline who wanted to know if humans could teach her how to make friends with her planet's hostile mathematical theorems. Mr. Wiggles had adapted to station life with the enthusiasm of someone who'd spent 3,000 years being feared and worshipped and was now discovering the simple joy of scheduled mealtimes and belly rubs. The creature had learned to compress itself into what could generously be called indoor size, though it still occasionally forgot and accidentally existed in the ventilation system, causing minor reality fluctuations and very confused maintenance reports. Personal log, Station Commander Vex, Day 184 of what I have officially classified as the incident that broke physics. Commander Vex spoke into her recording device while watching Tommy teach Mr. Wiggles how to play holographic chess. The Shadow Stalker was winning, primarily because it could calculate moves across 17 dimensions simultaneously, but it kept deliberately making suboptimal moves so Tommy wouldn't feel bad. Today's notable events include Mr. Wiggles accidentally phasing through the mess hall floor during lunch, causing Ensign Blort to spill soup into a parallel dimension, where it apparently started a small religious movement. The cleanup crew has requested hazard pay, not for the interdimensional spillage, but for having to explain to a group of dimension-hopping zealots why their new soup-based deity was actually just a cafeteria accident. She paused the recording to watch Tommy explain the concept of checkmate to a creature that existed partially outside the normal flow of time and therefore already knew how the game would end. Dr. Park's latest research paper, titled Weaponized Friendship: How Humans Accidentally Revolutionized Galactic Diplomacy by Being Aggressively Nice to Things That Should Kill Them, has been rejected by 7 scientific journals on the grounds that it reads like bad science fiction and cannot possibly be based on real events. I have attached video evidence to prove otherwise, but 3 of the journal editors have requested extended leave for what their doctors are calling reality-induced stress disorders. The recording was interrupted by a gentle rumbling sound that shook the entire station. This had become so routine that nobody even looked up anymore. It just meant that Mr. Wiggles was purring, which he did whenever Tommy scratched behind his temporal lobe. Security Chief Rex has submitted his 47th request to update the station's combat training protocols to include a course on advanced friendship tactics. His proposed curriculum includes modules on offering snacks to hostile entities, the strategic use of compliments in combat situations, and how to pet something that exists in multiple dimensions without getting your hands stuck in yesterday. I have approved this request, primarily because our current combat effectiveness has somehow improved by 347% since we adopted what Rex calls the Tommy Doctrine. Commander Vex moved to the observation window, where she could see the wild zones spread out below them. It looked different now, somehow less threatening. Maybe it was because they knew Tommy had walked through it and emerged not only unharmed, but with a new best friend. Or maybe it was because Mr. Wiggles had apparently told all the other apex predators about his human friend, and now the entire ecosystem was curious about these strange creatures who responded to danger with friendship offers and snack distribution. The Crystalline delegation's final report has concluded that humans are a statistical impossibility that somehow achieved consciousness and learned to make friends with mathematics itself. They have requested to establish a permanent research facility here to study what they're calling the human friendship paradox. Their preliminary findings suggest that human pack bonding behavior may be the key to solving several ongoing galactic conflicts, though they admit they have no idea how to weaponize something that is by definition the opposite of a weapon. Through the station's internal comm system, she could hear Tommy's voice echoing from the recreational deck. Mr. Wiggles, you can't keep letting me win at hide-and-seek just because you like making me happy. That's not how games work. You have to try your best, even if your best involves existing in places that don't technically exist yet. Lieutenant Pip has submitted a request to add interdimensional pet care to the station's official training manual. Her proposed guidelines include helpful tips such as always keep a spare set of reality anchors when walking cosmic horrors, the proper way to brush tentacles that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously, and what to do when your pet accidentally creates a small black hole during playtime. I have approved this request because, let's face it, we're going to need it. Commander Vex returned to her desk, which was now decorated with crayon drawings that Tommy had made of the station crew. Her personal favorite was the one labeled Commander Vex and Mr. Wiggles being friends, which showed her sharing her coffee with a simplified but recognizable version of the Shadow Stalker. The fact that this had actually happened last Tuesday somehow made it both more disturbing and more heartwarming. Personal note: yesterday Tommy asked if we could visit the Wild Zone again to find Mr. Wiggles a friend because he thinks Mr. Wiggles gets lonely when he's at work all day. Dr. Park has agreed to this expedition, which she's calling Phase 2 of Operation Why Do We Keep Letting the 8-year-old Make First Contact Decisions. I have approved the mission, partially because our xenobiology department is excited about the research opportunities, but mostly because I've realized that Tommy's approach to interspecies diplomacy has a better success rate than our entire diplomatic corps. She looked up as the recreational deck's door opened, and Tommy came bouncing out, followed by Mr. Wiggles, who had learned to walk instead of phase through solid matter because it was more polite around the humans. The Shadow Stalker had also taken to wearing what could generously be called a collar, though it was actually a modified reality stabilizer that Tommy had decorated with holographic stickers. "Commander Vex!" Tommy called out, with the boundless energy of someone who had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with sufficient enthusiasm. "Mr. Wiggles wants to know if he can help with the station's defensive systems. He says he knows some really good hiding spots in dimensions that don't exist yet, and he promises not to accidentally eat any attacking ships unless they're really, really mean." Commander Vex looked at the 8-year-old human child and his interdimensional best friend, both of whom were looking at her with identical expressions of hopeful expectation, and realized that her life had become something that would require extensive footnotes to explain to future historians. "Tell Mr. Wiggles," she said, with the resigned tone of someone whose reality had been thoroughly reorganized by the power of friendship, "that we would be delighted to have his assistance with our defensive systems, provided he fills out the proper forms first." Tommy's face lit up like a small sun. "Did you hear that, Mr. Wiggles? You get to help protect the station. This is going to be the best job ever." The Shadow Stalker made a sound like happiness having a conversation with the harmonic resonance of joy, and Commander Vex realized that despite everything, the paperwork nightmares, the reality fluctuations, the constant stream of visitors who came to see the station where a human child had befriended cosmic horror, she wouldn't trade this assignment for anything in the galaxy. "End personal log," she said, watching Tommy explain to Mr. Wiggles why defensive systems needed to follow proper protocols, even when you could exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. "Note for the historical record. Today marks 6 months since humanity officially redefined the concept of impossible by applying the advanced diplomatic strategy of being nice to scary things. The galaxy is still trying to figure out what this means for the future of interspecies relations, but preliminary reports suggest that the universe just got a lot friendlier. And somewhere in the depths of space, other apex predators were having dreams about small human children with juice boxes and animal crackers, wondering what it might be like to have a friend who wasn't afraid of them. The universe, it turned out, had been waiting a very long time for someone to finally ask the right question. What if we tried being friends instead? Tommy Park, age 8 3/4, had accidentally provided the answer. "That sounds way more fun."